Good evening, everyone. We will get started here. Can everybody hear me? Okay, great. My name is Ben Malcheski. I'm the Vice President of the Jewish Federation JCC YMCA, President of the Rotary Foundation, and President of Redbird Sylvania. I'd like to welcome all of you to this very special evening with Tom Cole, sponsored by our friends at Taylor Automotive, as he launches his new book, Black in the Pocket, which we're happy to dig into tonight. Not least because when it's not a good time to talk football, of course, my fantasy team is struggling right now, so I could use some of Tom's wisdom, but most importantly, because I'm excited to really to get into this topic and learn about the why behind it, but because this is very important under the subject, especially in sports and football. But before we get into that, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to both our sponsors and our attendees who have supported us during the first season of author events. I'm going to actually grab this to kind of provide a little bit of context. I want to thank all of our sponsors in addition to Taylor, who've been just wonderful during our first great season here. As you can see, we've had just some amazing names, Oscar-winning screenwriters, Pulitzer Prize winners, all of them, multiple New York Times best-selling authors, and finally, I'm so excited to have these last two authors be really something of a homecoming. Local authors, Tim Berta was in September, and then we're wrapping things up tonight with Tom. As much as these are meant to raise the bar for the cultural programming in Northwest Ohio, they are also meant to be bridges to understanding in each other. And so when we talk about raising the bar, it's of course awesome to bring in these talented people, multiple award winners and best-selling authors, but it's also important to recognize the power of stories that are generated and cultivated locally, like with Tim and with Tom. So, as ever, I can't think of a better place to hold the event this evening than at Lourdes, our wonderful friends at Lourdes. Before I hand things over to Dr. Bissett, I wanted to bring your attention to some of the who's behind how these events are made possible. So, of course, we have, I'm going to just skip. Spoiler alert here, you'll see some of the photos, but proudly presented, coordinated, planned by Starlight Theater Group, Lourdes University, and Finch and Fern Bookseller. So nothing pleases us more than being the platform for thought-provoking discussion, curiosity-building conversations, and to take deep dives into these important topics and learning about the creative process behind the process with these talented people. So thank you all for supporting this, your continued support. Thanks for coming tonight, and thanks for coming to future events as well. So let me hand it off to Dr. Bissett. Thanks.
So, thank you, Ben, and welcome, everyone. It really is a pleasure to welcome you all here tonight to the Franciscan Center, and of course to our beautiful campus here at Lourdes University. This is my favorite time of year, and I think the campus looks great throughout the course of the year, but man, I was walking around campus earlier today, just taking a little bit of a break, and what an opportunity, again, just to be able to come to this wonderful place to work every day and take advantage of how beautiful our campus is. If you're from Sylvania, or I should say, if you're here for the first time, please come back and continue to come back and take advantage of all we have to offer. I know for many of you, this is not the first time that you've been at Lourdes, so welcome back. And I'm pretty sure that we have a few alumni in the room tonight too. So as I always say to our alumni, to you a special welcome home. It's great to have you all here tonight for this special event. I'd also like to take a moment to thank both our friends at Finch and Fern and Starlight Theater Group for making this evening's book launch possible with Tom. And I would also like to give a special thanks that I always forget because Ben does so much behind the scenes work for us and really Ben's leadership this summer and this fall, bringing this author series together at Lourdes, has just been spectacular. So thank you. It's great to have these events, and as Ben was saying, especially when we have community authors like we had with Tim last month, and of course Tom tonight, really makes it special. And Ben really is the person behind the scenes doing all the heavy lifting. So tonight I am very thrilled to welcome Tom Cole on behalf of Lourdes University, and honored that we are able to share in this evening's celebratory launch of his book, Black in the Pocket. When it was mentioned to me a few months ago that we may have this opportunity to host tonight's event, I could not have been more pleased. Not only because I found the subject of Tom's book to be so fascinating, but also, and I've gotten to know Tom in recent months. I've only been the president at Lourdes for about a year and a half now, and what I've gotten to know about Tom is he really does epitomize everything that we look to get across to our students here at Lourdes. Tom's selfless contributions for more than 30 years as a teacher and as a coach at St. John's Jesuit, as an outreach coordinator with the Taylor Automotive Group, as a dedicated family man, and now as the author of this book that chronicles the struggles of black athletes that experienced hatred and prejudice on and off the field during their playing days, speaks directly to Lourdes' 4 core values of community, service, learning, and reverence, which are the very foundation and essence of our academic community and our Franciscan Catholic beliefs. For us to be able to recognize Tom tonight and to have the chance to celebrate a person that holds everyone up makes this event all the more special. Tom, thank you again for allowing us to share this moment together with you, and thank you for all you have done and all you continue to do for Lourdes University and our students. So with that, let me turn things back over to Ben to formally introduce Tom and to start tonight's program. I hope you all enjoyed tonight's evening, and thank you again for being here.
Thank you very much. Can you grab that mic for me?
And I promise we'll give Tom a chance to talk this evening. So.
No, that's for you. You want me to?
So there is so much to talk about with this, and it's, we've been planning this for some time and just anticipating how fun it's going to be to just talk football, sports, local sports, national sports.
Yeah.
But I wanted to, because certainly, Tom's background and his history here locally he's had great reach and impact within our own community. So I wanted to start by just providing something of a little establishing shot. So, because I know we'll talk about his high school career and college, and certainly his career with BCSN and his current career as a community ambassador. So just to kind of give you some of the background, a rundown of Tom's stats, so to speak here. So Tom spent 30 years as a teacher and coach in high school and college. He was the first quarterback in the history of St. John's Jesuit High School. He went to, sounds like, that's an answer to a trivia question right there. He went to Ohio Wesleyan University with a major in history and a minor in English. He played quarterback on a D2 national championship football team at Ohio Wesleyan, where he also played basketball. Tom has a 25-year career as a TV sports broadcaster at Buckeye and Buckeye Cable Sports Network, BCSN. 25 years as a community coordinator at BCSN, and is currently a community outreach coordinator for the Taylor Automotive family. He is in the St. John's Hall of Fame, the City of Toledo League Hall of Fame, won 7 State of Ohio Sports Broadcasting Awards, BCSN MVP, Martin Luther King Legacy Award, a State of Ohio Broadcast Award, and Northwest Ohio Coaches Award for broadcasting. So that's quite the rundown of accomplishments. He's also written 3 books prior to this. So this, Black in the Pocket, is his 4th book. So, wow, does it bring you all back? Does it, in a nutshell right there?
Ben, that's so kind of me. Thank you so very much. And it's an honor to be here. It's really a heartfelt honor. I look at all these familiar faces out here, people that I know very well and respect and admire. And it's hard. Everybody's busy today, and everybody's got a million things going. and to have people come out for this event is such an honor, and I thank you so very much, because I know what that's like. It's hard to do things today, and it's so appreciative, and hopefully we'll make you maybe smile a little bit, and we'll have some fun, and even though it's a somewhat sensitive topic, we'll have some fun, and if you like football, I think it'll work out for you. And Lourdes is great. I'll tell you, I've interacted with a lot of people in my lifetime, and President Bissett and Vice President Wills and Ben and Kara and all the people that we've interacted with at Lourdes have been incredible. They're great people. We have a Lourdes graduate, I think, Social Butterfly, you're a Lourdes graduate? Yeah? Okay. It's a great school, and it does a tremendous service to our community, providing educational opportunities for many students, regular students, people that are working and trying to get a degree. I mean, they fill a lot of gaps for people in our community. Some people go for a couple of years and then go to UT or BG, but it really provides a great service. So it's an honor to be here, and it's a privilege.
Awesome. And actually appropriate too, as much as this is like a homecoming, it's our final event that we'll have this first season. Lourdes University has their homecoming in 2 weeks here too, so great time to visit the campus. It's beautiful at this time of year. But we've been waiting so long to get into this, as me and you have been chatting and chatting as a small group. But so what was the kind of, we'll get into some of your influences and that later through this, but what was the original kernel of the idea? When did you or it dawn on you, or the epiphany that, we needed to have this conversation, we needed to have a book like this, we needed to something to generate this topic? Well,
I believe, Ben, that everybody's got a book in them, number one, and people tell you that, I couldn't write a book. Well, you're wrong. I'm nothing special. I've written books, but I did find something interesting. And again, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. You'll find that out as we go along here tonight. But I did find something interesting. If you are thinking of writing a book, I just stumbled into this, but I'm telling you it works. People have a difficult time writing sequentially, from the beginning, first paragraph and first sentence, and then writing all the way through. It's hard to do. It's hard to write sequentially. They get stuck, or they get blocked, or they can't, I can't go any further. What you do is you figure out how many chapters you want. Mary Helen's a great writer, she already knows this. You figure out how many chapters you want, you write out each one of your chapter titles. First of all, you need a good title for your book. A title is extremely important. But you write out each chapter, what the title is, and then you go back and look at it and say, today I'm going to write, something on chapter 6. Okay, that makes sense to me. All right, and then tomorrow it's chapter 12. Okay, I'll write in chapter 12. But you're not writing sequentially, and it makes it tons easier. So you have a book in you, go ahead and do it. As far as writing this book, I coached quarterbacks my entire life. I tried to play the position, and I put an emphasis on tried. They always talk about what's the toughest position to play in. Brad's a quarterback back there. He knows what I'm talking about. Christy played quarterback on the Adrian Powderpuff team. It's tough to play quarterback. And, I think it's tough to hit a baseball. I believe that. Really tough to hit a baseball. Probably tough to be a goalie. Ted, one of the great goalies in the history of Toledo hockey, Ted Tucker's right over here. Tough to be in the goalie and stop a puck that's coming how fast?
Depends. You were shooting it up to 100 miles an hour.
100 miles an hour in the goal, okay? So those things are tough. But I will tell you, you take a snap from center. It's a little easier. Dave Merritt's here. He's a great football coach. You take a snap under center, and you drop back 7 steps, and you're going to pass the football. I'm telling you, it closes in on you. It's like the walls close in on you. You're looking downfield. You're trying to find the people. Okay, that person's covered. I go to the next read. Then I go to the next read. While you're doing that, those progressions are in your mind. You actually hear, first of all, the bodies slamming together, which if you've been on a sideline in an NFL game or a big-time college game, it sounds like freeway car crashes. They really are. They're all small car crashes. So you're standing there, you're looking downfield, you can't look for where these people are, and you hear all these crashes, and you hear the person who's coming to hit you, and you can hear them breathing. That's how close they get to you before the impact comes. And I'm telling you, it's tough to do, to keep, sort of Rudyard Kipling thing, to keep, your head about you when everyone else is losing theirs. So playing that position is so difficult. I was always intrigued with it, tried to play it, wasn't that good at it, but I tried. And then I coached it, wasn't that good at it, but I tried. But I was always infatuated with the position, and the history of the quarterbacks always intrigued me. You learn a lot from history, taught history for many, many years. And the history of quarterbacks in pro football, starting from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and into the 80s, was if you were an African American and you were a quarterback, you were a good athlete, and the first thing the coach said to you most times, hey, when they got to the NFL, hey, you're a really good athlete, but, it was always the but, you're a really good athlete, but you're going to be a wide receiver, a defensive back, or a running back. Not even giving them the opportunity to show what they could do. It was already, well, you can't be quarterback. And that went on, the 50s, 60s, 70s, and into the 80s. And it finally stopped. Today it's great. Our grandson wants to be Patrick Mahomes, and he's a little quarterback. He does the last sketch in the book. He draws Patrick Mahomes. He loves Mahomes. Everything is Mahomes. And so it's half the quarterbacks in the NFL are African American today. That's the way it should be. But it wasn't like that. It was not like that at all. And can I tell the Doug Williams story, or do you want to save it?
Yeah, no, go.
So what stopped it? 1988, Super Bowl 22. It was the Redskins versus the Denver Broncos. I think Elway was with the Broncos at that time. Doug Williams was the African-American quarterback, first African-American quarterback. Kevin, you know what I'm talking about. Kevin was a great football player at Iowa State. To start a Super Bowl. Could you imagine the pressure that was on this man? He was carrying the mantle for every African-American quarterback that existed. He's in the Super Bowl. He's a black quarterback playing in the biggest game in the world. The biggest game in the world. They cover the Super Bowl with 200 cameras. It's unbelievable if you've ever been to a Super Bowl or seen how they cover it. So he felt this pressure. I interviewed him one time on BCSN. Great guy, kind of quiet, but good man, good heart, a real good heart. And early in the game, they're down 14-0 to Denver. Now he's carrying the mantle of all this pressure. Every black quarterback that ever picked up a football, and he's getting his derriere kicked, right? He drops back in the pocket, somebody gets on his knee, as they do, wrenches his knee. Doug's a big guy, 6'4", 220, 230, but wrenched his knee. He limps off the field. He's down 14-0. All this pressure was on him, goes to the bench, and he tells the trainer, I don't care what you have to do. He said, duct tape it, chicken wire, I don't care, but whatever you do, get it done, because I'm going back in. So they work on his knee, he goes back in, limps back into the ball game, and then he proceeded to throw for 358 yards and 4 touchdowns, and the Redskins won 42-10, 42-14 over Denver. And from that point, the ceiling was crushed. No one could ever say that an African-American quarterback could not lead a team and win a Super Bowl. That stopped it. But it took a long time. We're talking 88. That's a long time. Now today, it's the way it should be. But I was always interested in the gentleman that fought that fight, that didn't get recognized. Because we all stand on other people's shoulders, right? We all do. And how many people do you know that did great things that they didn't really get recognized for, but people stood on their shoulders? So to me, this was a kind of homage to all these gentlemen that fought this fight, and maybe they didn't get recognized. So this was my little way of recognizing them, Ben.
And it is just wild because, you say it's 88.
Yeah.
The other sports where you had, color barriers broken,
yeah,
or at least the topic, was it just seems so far down the lane. It's wild to think. So that's for me from that side. Two big things with it was long overdue.
Right.
What happens too in absence of someone, revisiting the past and sharing these stories of what they witnessed or those lost opportunities, those lost careers, the lost potential because of constructs like this, that if you don't revisit them, if you don't chronicle them, they are lost.
Yep.
And so that to me is like the side of it where it potentially tragic, because so many of the athletes, and I know we'll jump ahead here. Oh, something happened. But there we go. But some of these stories here, they had smaller careers too. That you would, the names, they would have been, the stories would have been lost. I mean,
Yes.
only their family members might know of some of these. So just so pivotal too, where the other thing that I think is just so valuable too, I mean, obviously your passion, your experience, your knowledge, but I love reading and seeing these, because the stories do come to life through your lens. So you're really, that really comes through on the page, and it's these stories, I mean, the passion that you feel for all these stories, I mean, it's just really, it's a entertaining, very difficult subject matter.
Yeah.
At times it's really processed through, I mean, with this your genuine positivity that you bring, and I mean, it's seeing you engage with the audience, it's on total display. But you bring that energy to it, and it's completely evident too.
Well, we only learn from history, and we all know that if you don't study history, what's the old aphorism is, you're doomed to repeat the same mistakes. I don't care whether it's athletics, whether it's politics. You hate to even say politics today, somebody will throw a tomato at me, but it's pretty tense these days. People cutting you off on the road and telling you you're number one as they go by. A lot of stuff going on. But if you don't really study history and study events, they say that history is I think it's called the dialectic. I should know this. I taught it at one time. But history is just one big circle, and the same kind of events keep happening again and again. Now, the places may change, or the dates may change, but they're the similar events that keep happening. So if you study history, you study events, maybe we won't make as many mistakes. I mean, we're going to make mistakes, but maybe we can cut the mistakes down, and we all live a little bit better life,
Yeah. And so one thing, just to kind of get us started on terms of, not only how, you grew it. I love this quote here from the book, but my mom raised me to be a quarterback. What I've also, in talking with you through the years, I mean, we've worked together for a long time now. When I brought in Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, gave you the exclusive access to
Wow, that was a fun interview. Kareem, you ever see 7'3"? You don't understand what 7'3" is. I'm 6'4", and Ben did a great job bringing in Kareem. I'm 6'4", he made me look like a munchkin from the Wizard of Oz. Seriously, he can't get through a door. I mean, I don't know how they live or go to hotels, or it was incredible. And I'll tell you something about that. It was so interesting to me. Ben did a great job bringing him to the library. It was wonderful. And I was told by people, you never should prejudge people. I hate that when people say, well, he's like this or she's like that. Hey, I want to find out myself. Don't tell me anything. But people told me when Kareem was coming in, is he still the leading scorer all time in the NBA, or
No,
LeBron got him? Okay. The skyhook was unstoppable. But anyways, people told me, well, listen, you interview him, but I'll tell you what, he hates people in the press. And he said he might when he's interviewing with you, he might pull out a newspaper and just start reading it. Or he might get up and walk out. And I said, okay. And he said, the one thing you have to know is that he won't shake your hand. Okay? And so I went home, and I was kind of confused about that. And you always have somebody that you trust when you get your advice. And my wife has always been that for me, Karen. And she formatted our book. She did all of that. And I knew what I was going to do, but I ran it by her. I said, I'm thinking, I'm going to extend my hand. If Kareem doesn't want to shake, so what? But I'm going to do that. And she said, you darn right you're going to do that. That's exactly what you're going to do. And so I knew I was on the right path, right? So Kareem comes in, all 7'2.5" or 7'3", and he had a book that he was promoting for the library, right? And he sits down, and I extend my hand, and he shook my hand. His hand wrapped all the way around mine. And he gave the best interview. Couldn't have been more cordial. Couldn't have been more kind. Was a wonderful interview. So, you never prejudge people. You give everybody a fair shot. They give you a fair shot. And that was a great night. That really was.
Yeah, and it was, reminded me too of, so we see this quote, we've known each other for a long time,
Yeah.
doing different things, but then what we see you, and many people know you as like the quarterback, but it's evident to me too that like your energy, like you're like a coach. You were raised up to be a coach too.
Right.
So that's what I love is like the coach's perspective and how you champion like people that have all come and you're pointing people out. And I think every time we met to talk about the book, you're thanking, you're picking everybody up around you. It's this team mentality. And so, well, your mom raised you to be a quarterback too. Something, to also be a coach. She raised you to be a coach. And all these people that, it does the truth of it taking a village. All these people contributing to the book too.
Yes, all the grandkids did AI pictures, and my wife formatted it. And it was a family, certainly a family project. There, my mom was really, before Title IX, she was a really good athlete, but she didn't have the sports to play. My sister was the same way, Jill. She was a good athlete, but they didn't have as many sports. Title IX was such a huge deal that women get the same opportunity. Young women get BCSN. That's one of the things that's so great about BCSN is they give equal time. When we started it, that was one of the things we demanded. It was going to be as many events for boys as there are for girls. It wasn't going to be all boy coverage and, just a little bit of girls basketball. The girls got even play across the board. And, but my mom got stuck in Title IX and she couldn't play any of the sports really. It was before then. She could throw a football 40, 50 yards. Her brother was the first great quarterback in the history of the University of Toledo. His name was Lee Pete. He was truly the first great quarterback, and they've had many. But my mom was a better thrower of the football than her brother was. So she did kind of raise me to be a quarterback, and she'd run us out to the field and bring the wagon and the little kids, and Jill snapped the ball. She was a good athlete, and I had two brothers that ended up being wide receivers, and we'd go to the park all day and throw the ball. And Christy, I tell you, Magistrate Christy in the back, Sylvania Magistrate, she does a great job in Sylvania keeping the community safe. We were in Florida one time and vacationing Fort Myers Beach, and gosh, I pray for those people. It's been so rough. This is before any of that happened. And Christy and I would always bring a football, and we're throwing the football on the beach. Just what we did. We always threw the football. And people, so she had on her bikini. It was, not anything outrageous. It was a bikini. And suddenly I'm looking around, and there's guys everywhere. And I'm thinking, what the heck? Well, she's throwing the ball like 40, 45 yards in the bikini. These guys are, who is this person? Who does she play for? So our family, Josie played a little quarterback in her grade school. So we've been raised in the quarterback football coaching mentality.
Yeah, then part of that comes with that quarterback position is you do have to be. You're the coach on the field, right? You're calling out, you're picking people up. You have to recognize, where everybody is, and to make sure that you're all firing.
Yes, 100%.
Well, that's truly evident. And how cool that the book is really the sum of all of everybody's efforts.
It is. It is a family project, so I was really proud of that. Absolutely.
Cool. So. And of course, what was the story? I actually didn't get this from you. So the Claire B book.
Does anybody know who Claire B is? Anybody? Denise? Now, come on, Denise. Denise has a great bookstore, Gathering Volumes, in Perrysburg, and she's opened a second location, I think. It's an incredible bookstore if you want to get books. Claire B was considered to be one of the greatest basketball coaches that ever lived. Anybody hear John Wooden, UCLA? Okay. When John Wooden needed to ask questions about something in basketball, he went to Claire B. Bobby Knight, right? He went to Claire B. I think he has the highest winning percentage in basketball of any coach that's ever lived. But what he did, he's also coached other sports. He coached football, he coached baseball. So Claire B got this idea when he retired. I've had a lot of experiences. I've known a lot of great kids. So what he did is he created this series. It's called the Chip Hilton series. And Chip was a guy that he actually coached. Chip was the All-American guy. Chip was so good, it was ridiculous. Great grades, good heart, good person, always did the right thing. And he was real, and he gave him a different name, because you can't use people's names, but the guy was real. And then he took other characters that he knew that he had coached and created those names, or gave them special names. And then he had situations that he was in as a coach, and he created the stories around the situation. So it's a whole series of high school stories, and eventually Chip goes to college, and these stories are, even though they're written at a lower level, grade schoolish, early high school, the mores that are in these stories are unbelievable. Chip doesn't have it easy. He gets faced with hard times. He's brought up by a single mom. He has to work a job, plus try to do his sports. He gets roughed up by some of his coaches who are jealous of him because he got a lot of attention. I mean, real problems that people run into. And the whole series is about how Chip handles the problems. He figures his way out of it. But Claire B. wrote all these stories, and I thought, gosh, these are kind of inspirational things. And so I started collecting all the stories, and then that kind of got me into writing, really.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I hadn't known that about you in the past, but it's what I love about that too is how we connect with something at a young age, and
Yes.
how you just continue to process life
Yes.
and look at the life lessons that have
Yes.
continued to teach you as you go on. That's
100%.
Awesome. So, of course, on the field too. So let's tell us about these pictures here.
Well, those are probably 2 interceptions and a fumble. The two on the right are ones at the University of Toledo. We played a championship game, the Shoe Bowl against St. Francis. That's probably a pickoff. And the one in the middle, I think, was a night game against Cardinal Stritch, a long pass, and that's probably a pickoff. And the one running the ball, or she knows holding it, Coach Merritt holding it fundamentally correctly here, securely. Coach Merritt says no. And that was probably a fumble when I got hit. So, yeah, those are some high school things.
St. John's.
Yes, St. John's, yes.
And then, of course,
Ohio Wesleyan University, just some clips from, I'm sure all of you have had these experiences, but I was so fortunate to go to Ohio Wesleyan University and get that kind of education. I had a great education at St. John's Jesuit, great education at Ohio Wesleyan. But I will tell you, in football, I met 10 of the best people I've ever met in my life. And I can tell you to this day, 50 years later, they are still those people. We still stay in contact. I can't even explain it. It's if I don't see him for 20 years and we meet someplace, it's just like we had talked the other day. I mean, just some of the best people I've ever met in my life, no question about it.
So in that actually too, I'll jump ahead a couple slides here too, but of course, teaching you to be a leader on the field and off. This shows you, as a community ambassador, and then some of your BSN work too. But getting into some of these, as you're talking about playing right there. So did the idea for the book where that you've witnessed some of these stories in your life that,
Yep.
Compelled to write about this, to address this topic, I'm sure probably brewed through the years and formulated.
Sure.
But were you thinking of certain, we all witness maybe national level stories to some
Yep.
degree, like the Doug Williams story,
Yep.
because those are national conversations or perspectives to some degree. But some of these ones here, these are very localized stories.
Yeah, well, Chuck Ely, everybody knows Chuck or knows about Chuck. Is there anybody that doesn't know Chuck Ely? Doesn't know the legend of Chuck Ely? We became very close through BCSN. We worked together on the Undefeated Foundation that he runs. He does great work here in Toledo, helping kids. He's a wonderful man. He's a great man. If you don't know his story, Portsmouth, Ohio, Notre Dame High School in Portsmouth, Ohio. He never lost a game in high school. Who can say, we've got some athletes in here, who can say they played on a team and never lost a game? That's pretty rare in football, I'll tell you what, pretty rare in football. And never lost a game. So Chuck Lauterbur, Frank Lauterbur, who was the head coach of the University of Toledo, heard about this Ely guy and said, let's send a scout down to see him. Well, in those days, scouting in the 60s isn't like it is today. They take an old coach, they pack him a gym bag and a bag full of sandwiches and some Coca-Colas, and they put him on the road, give him $50. They put him on the road for 2 weeks. Go see this high school kid, go see that high school. There was no internet, you had to go see him in person. So this old coach who's out on the road for UT, he goes to see Ely. He gets to Portsmouth, Ohio, and he asks, where can I find Chuck Ely? And the guy goes, well, the football season's over. You missed it by a week. But he said, hey, it's not a wasted trip. If you don't want to go Chuck play basketball, he's playing in a game. So the guy goes to the gym, watches Chuck play a basketball game. He scores 33 points. He makes the last shot as the clock is running down to win the game. So the scout comes back to Frank Lauterbur and says, I don't know if he can play football. He's a hell of a basketball player. And Lauterbur, to his credit, brought Chuck in and says, we're giving you a full ride. But he said, we're going to be moving you to wide receiver, defensive back, or running back. And this is the core of Chuck Ely. You talk about integrity, honesty, toughness. Chuck looked Frank Lauterbur in the eye. Frank Lauterbur, if any of you knew Frank Lauterbur, Kevin, I don't know if you knew him or not, he's a tough old Marine, boy. I mean, I'm telling you, he was back in the days where you lift the face mask up on the field and you fire in a couple attention getters to the players. He was a tough guy, I want to tell you what. Chuck looked him right in the eye and he said, Coach, I'm a quarterback. If you give me the opportunity to compete for the job, you won't regret it. Lauterbur was so taken aback by that response from a young kid who he was offering a scholarship to. Chuck had no scholarship. Nobody offered him anything anywhere. And he was willing to turn it down. And Lauterbur, to his credit, said, okay, we'll give you a shot. He comes in, he wins the job. The rest is history. Never lost a game in high school. 35 games later at the University of Toledo, never lost a game at the University of Toledo. 3 Tangerine Bowls, 11th in the Heisman Trophy, voting out of Toledo. 11 out of Toledo. And if Chuck came out today, he would be a first pick in the draft. But again, he didn't fit the mold of what they wanted, so the pro coaches did come around. But here's what they told him. Chuck, hey, you're an exceptional athlete. We like you. But we're going to move you to defensive back, running back, wide receiver. Chuck says, hey, don't bother drafting me. He goes, I'm a quarterback. He then goes to Canada, and the first year in Canada, he wins the Grey Cup, which is their Super Bowl. And he played there for, I think, 13 years, holds all kind of records, Hall of Fame. But there's a guy that stood to his principles, incredible man, gives back to his community, but he didn't get what he should have gotten. But he's not bitter about it. He was grateful for the opportunities that he did have. And if you want to know how he learned to throw a football, his backyard, a train track went through his backyard, and you know how the boxcars come through on the train, sometimes the doors are open, so Chuck would collect big rocks. These are empty boxcars, he's not hurting anybody. They're empty boxcars. He would stand in his backyard, kind of drop back a little bit, and the train's moving, and the principles, all you coaches out there, places, the people that have played, the principle is, you're throwing a receiver open, and when they talk about throwing a receiver open, you're not throwing the ball to where he's presently, you're throwing the ball to where he's going to be. So Chuck was throwing the ball through the boxcars as it was moving. So that got his anticipation of throwing and releasing and leading a receiver. So that's how he developed his passing motion. The remarkable guy, Chuck Ely, no question about it.
Well, and to ride that wave a little bit too, with the reference to Canadian football.
Yep.
A lot of these quarterbacks too, I mean, Canada having maybe a little bit more enlightened or liberal policies at the time, found refuge, so to speak, in the Canadian League.
Ben, you're spot on. That's absolutely. Canada was so far ahead of us as far as giving African American athletes opportunities. They were way ahead. They gave more quarterbacks opportunities. They had no hang up about the quarterback being African American, none at all. Canada was different. Why? I can't answer that question, but they were more open and more fair, and they gave more black quarterbacks opportunities, and eventually they would migrate, they would go to Canada, have success, and then finally come to the NFL. Warren Moon, one of the greatest quarterbacks that ever lived. He couldn't get anything in the NFL as a quarterback, went to Canada, had a great career, then comes back to the NFL and had a Hall of Fame career. So many of them went to Canada first and then came to the NFL.
Yeah. Great stories, too. I mean, and some of these other ones. So Chuck, obviously, is kind of in the middle there. But who is on the left?
That's Marlon Briscoe. My granddaughter did the picture of Briscoe on AI. I don't know if you remember, a lot of people don't know him. He was called the Magician. He was with Denver in the 60s. Great quarterback, incredible athlete. He comes in as a rookie in Denver. He's like the third string quarterback. The other two get hurt. Suddenly they have to put him in the game. And he's great. He's great. Denver's a nothing team, and they win like 4 or 5 games. They're talking about him as Rookie of the Year. Hank Stram, anybody know the name? Hank Stram, Hall of Fame coach with the Kansas City Chiefs. Hank Stram said about him, he might be the best quarterback I've ever seen in the last 10 years. Incredible guy. So he has this great run. And at the end of the season, they don't give him a chance to be the starting quarterback the next year. Matter of fact, they trade him. Here's this guy was remarkable, and they trade him. Well, you ask yourself, why? You know, he wasn't a malcontent. He was a good guy. The teammates liked him. But they were hung up with, well, we can't have him be our quarterback, really. We used him when we needed him. So he gets traded to Buffalo. Buffalo said, you're not going to be a quarterback. You know, you get the bud again. You're not going to be a quarterback for us. We'll use you as a wide receiver. So Marlon Briscoe, he just said, I can't fight this anymore. So he became a wide receiver. He did well with Buffalo as a wide receiver. He then gets traded to Miami. There's a happy ending to the story. Kevin, you're shaking your head, you know. He goes to Miami and becomes a great receiver with Miami, and he wins 2 Super Bowls. So he got, you know, he didn't get what he should have gotten, but he got 2 Super Bowl wins, which was pretty cool.
Shula years?
Miami Shula, yeah, it was Miami Shula.
So on some of the best teams.
Yeah, Kick and Zonka and all those guys, 100%. And the one guy in the middle of the bottom, Ben, Sandy Stevens. I would say nobody here probably knows Sandy Stevens. Anybody here? Okay. And that's part of why we wrote the book. He was a quarterback at Minnesota. He was here's the story. It's a visualization story. Sandy played, he was quarterback in Minnesota, first black quarterback in Minnesota. In his dorm room, you know, in our dorm rooms, we put up album covers or pictures, or, you know, I had Beatle pictures, album covers tacked in my ceiling, or Sgt. Pepper's. And if I had it today, I had all these Beatle first things. It was like $30,000, and I had them tacked up on a ceiling in the college. It wasn't very smart. But anyways, he tacked up in his room a huge picture of the Rose Bowl. And, you know, Minnesota had never been near a Rose Bowl at all. And when his teammates or friends in the dorm come into his room, they said, Sandy, what's this? It's the Rose Bowl. And he goes, I'll tell you what, I'm going to take you there. I said, we're going, and I'm going to take you there. Anybody would come in his room and they laughed at him. Even his own teammates laughed at him. They made jokes about it. Well, I'll be damned. By the time he was a senior, he took this nobody team from nowhere. Minnesota won the national championship that year under him as a quarterback. Whenever you heard Minnesota win a national championship in football, they won the national championship and they won the Rose Bowl. And Sandy Stevens was the quarterback. First African-American quarterback to win a Rose Bowl, first African-American to quarterback a college team to go to a national championship. And he all did it with that visualization. You know, I was taught by a pretty smart person one time that told me, if you visualize your goals, you know, if you have visual things around you to remind you of what you want to do, if you commit to that, you have a much, much higher chance of accomplishing those goals because you've committed to it. You're either writing them down or you're putting them up visually, but you're telling people, I'm going to do this. And once you do that, there's a bigger effort to get it done. So nobody knows Sandy Stevens, but he's kind of a pretty important guy.
There's a lot of names like that. We won't, obviously can't mention all of them that are in the book, but so what's kind of the ratio, or how many of them did you actually kind of witness, or you came across organically? And then did you seek out any stories in this book, or is it just through the kind of the wealth of your knowledge, your career development, that you kind of witnessed all these or heard about them?
Yeah, it's a good question, Ben. Obviously, it's a great question. I knew a lot of them, but what's unique about it is you run into like the Sandy Stevens story. I didn't know that. There's Duke Slater, which I don't think Duke is up there. I don't know if Duke's up there, but he was an interesting Fritz Pollard, who's in the corner up on the far corner up there throwing the football. He was the first African-American quarterback in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and he had an incredible struggle. When he played professionally, he had to come in from the visitor's side of the stands. He couldn't come in the home field side with his team. He had to come in from the visitor's side because the people threw rocks and bricks and things at him. So they had to bring him in a separate way to get to his team. There was another fellow, I don't know, maybe I'm probably too old here. I'm the old guy here. But a guy named Kenny Washington, who played for UCLA. Kenny, Bob Snyder, anybody remember Bob Snyder from Toledo? Bob Snyder invented the T formation. He coached the University of Toledo. He was head coach of the come from Toledo. He went to Libby High School. Went to OU. Bob was head coach at UT for 1 year. Head coach of the Los Angeles Rams with Bob Waterfield. He married Jane Russell, the movie star. And that's my man. I'm going back too far, but a million years ago. But Bob created the T formation. The modern offense that we have, where you get underneath the center and everything else was half wing, shuffle pass stuff. He created it. He invented it here in Toledo. And all the colleges took Bob around, Notre Dame, all the big schools. Hey, Bob, put this offense in for him. So he's a father of the modern offense. He coached Kenny Washington when he was in Los Angeles as a head coach of the Rams. And by the time he got to Kenny Washington, he had both of his knees were destroyed just from football. But he still was playing. But Bob said if he would have been given the opportunities when he should have had the opportunities, he was better than Jim Thorpe, Bronco Nagurski. Bob said he would be the greatest that ever played the game, but he just didn't get the opportunity. So that's again part of why people don't know Kenny Washington, but that's how good he was. And Bob Schneider knew football. Like I said, he's the father of the modern offense. So,
well, it's also interesting to think too, where you break down. There's a part in the book where you go through different players through the decades that didn't make it, not just because of the mindset,
right,
or where we were culturally or as a society, but because sometimes these systems didn't work.
Right.
Like we didn't have an RPO or run pass off.
100%.
And so some of these people that had they just that idea of like, had I exist, I should have been born in another era or another time. But some of these quarterbacks, like they had the skill set, the tool set. They might have been ideal now or indifferent or vice versa. But just they didn't. There wasn't the system in place for them, or it wasn't the trend of offense for coaches.
Then you're spot on. It's a different game today. You don't have to be 6'4" and 240 pounds to stand in the pocket. You can be smaller. You can do the option reads and all those things. Chuck Ely would be a star today in the NFL, be a huge star in the NFL. Matter of fact, you could pick the teams that Chuck Ely's on in the NFL. The guy that can run, throw, move around, smart. Ely was that in the win streak, 35 in a row. I don't know if you understand 35 in a row in football. Kevin does from Ohio State. 35 in a row, you can't do it. You cannot do it. Miami Hurricanes got close on the UT streak. They played Ohio State. It was Miami against Ohio State. Miami had gotten to 34, I believe. It was the national championship game, and Ohio State stopped them from getting to 35 and tying UT. But 35 is, you just can't do it. But during the streak, UT was playing Bowling Green. They were somewhere in the middle of the streak, and UT was down. Have you ever gone to a football game at Bowling Green? The wind tunnel there? The wind at Bowling Green is just, I can't even explain it down on the field. If you haven't been, I mean, it's ridiculous. You could throw a sideline pass and have a lot of muster on it, and it's coming back at you, coming the other way. The wind is incredible. So UT was down. There were 40-some seconds to go in the game. They needed a field goal to win it. They were 50 yards away. Ely goes in the huddle. The gale is in their face. He comes in the huddle, and a buddy of mine was in the huddle, so I know this is a fact, which I put it in the book. And Chuck says to the people, whoops, I'm sorry. Chuck says to the people in the huddle, it was no inspirational thing, it was no yelling at anybody, it wasn't any of that. Chuck just says, let's go to work. That's all he said, let's go to work. And he proceeded to hit like 4 or 5 passes, got him down to the 23-yard line. I think there was 1 second left. And again, this gale force wind. And I don't know if you believe in folklore or, Babe Ruth pointed and called a shot the one time. I swear, Ely on the sideline, you're not going to believe this, but I'm telling you it's true. On the sideline, when the field goal team came out, Ely put his arms up. I'm telling you, when the ball was snapped, the gale force wind stopped. You can talk to anybody from Bowling Green, and they will tell you the wind stopped, he kicked the ball through, they win the game. I mean, it's just, you can't make, that's a movie, and it really happened that way. UT, during the streak, they were in game 27 or someone playing Villanova, they're losing again. There's only 30 or 40 seconds to go. They're 60 yards away. They need a field goal again to win against Villanova. And Chuck goes in the huddle, and I know the wide receiver that he said it to. He said, listen, we need a long one. He told the offensive lineman, listen, block him as long as you can. I'm going to have to move around a little bit, buy some time. It was Glenn Smith, who was the wide receiver. He says, Glenn, I know you're not the fastest, okay? So it's going to take you a while to get down there. So I'm going to move around a little bit. Sure as enough, Chuck drops back. He's moving around. People are hanging on him. He's trying to evade. Glenn Smith got down there. He threw a 40-yard bomb. He catches the ball, falls out of bounds. Field goal team comes in, 1 or 2 seconds on the clock, kick the field goal, and then on they go. So, it's, storybook stuff that shouldn't happen. We should, Ben, can we mention the Deal Me In thing? I think it's kind of a cool thing with Stan Musial. Some of those stories.
Yeah.
You may know Stan Musial or ever hear of Stan Musial. One of the greatest baseball players that ever lived. Talking about, improving relationships and understanding how to lift people and we all have the power to lift people, to make things better. Kindness what does kindness cost us? What does including people cost us? Nothing. So Stan Musial is one of the greatest baseball players that ever lived. He's in an all-star game in the late 50s, early 60s. He comes in the locker room, and the National League All-Stars, the locker room is divided into 2 sections. All the white guys, all-stars, were sitting down, talking, eating sandwiches, drinking pops, whatever. They smoked cigarettes back then, believe it or not. And baseball players smoked a lot of cigarettes. And then on the other side were the black players. Now this is a team. These are the all-stars. Completely divided. White guys over here, African-American gentlemen over there. Stan Musial, a white gentleman. Biggest star in baseball. The African-American gentlemen were playing cards. They were all playing cards. And Stan walked in, and all he said was, deal me in. He sat down with the African-American guys, changed everything. Changed everything. Little things that we do. Joe Namath of the New York Jets. Joe Namath went to Alabama when Wallace was at Alabama, and Wallace stood in the doorway and was going to block the student from attending the school. And Namath was actually there that day. He knew the young lady who was trying to go to school at Alabama. They were friends. And he had seen a lot. He came from a Pennsylvania integrated neighborhood. His best friends were African American. He grew up in a totally integrated neighborhood. When he went to Alabama, he had a picture of one of his girlfriends on his table in college in the dorm room. She was African American. He got destroyed by people. He didn't understand it. He said,
This is my neighborhood. This is what we do. We're all friends. We all get along. So he gets hired. He gets drafted by the Jets in 1965. He's the highest paid rookie in the history of the NFL. Today it's cap fee. It was $450,000. Today it's nothing. But it was big then. It was huge then. And he goes, first day of practice, he goes in the lunchroom of the Jets in 65, huge cafeteria, although white guys are eating by themselves, and all the African-American guys are eating by themselves. Pro team, no line of demarcation, nobody. First thing Joe did is he got his tray, got his food, he walked over and sat down with the African-American guys. That changed everything, and he ate with them every day. That changed everything on the team. It made them a team that eventually came together, and they won probably the most important Super Bowl in the history of Super Bowls in Super Bowl III, when they beat the Colts, and then the AFL and the NFL merged. So little things that you do aren't really little things. When you include people, when you're kind to people, and those are kind of some of the things that we wanted to bring out, Ben.
No, and I love that at-large perspective that you bring to both the local events that kind of tie them into the national picture, and also then to the national perspective. There's so much good stuff in here. We won't have a chance to get into it, all of it, but and we're going in and out.
Okay, there
but,
you go.
yeah, no, it's a great read. I think we are so lucky to have somebody like Tom in our community that there's a lot of takes that are more modern takes in here too, on Mel Kiper and the draft and how
Mel Kiper
and all that. There's
Mel Kiper is you guys know Mel Kiper, don't you?
kind of the draft guru.
The draft nut, the guru. He's a very smart businessman. He's very, very bright. He saw a possible money-making opportunity. He turned it into $1 million, multi-million-dollar job. He's a guy with all the hair greased back. Mel has so much hair or grease in his hair, he could cook French fries off of the top of them. But he advises all these pro teams on who are the number one quarterbacks to take, who are the number one receivers. Mel never played a down of football in his life. He never put on a football uniform. He played JV baseball, and he had he says all these guys can play. He has no idea, but he turned it into it's a major industry. And credit to him, he was smart enough to do that. So,
well, that's why speaking with you and getting your perspective on really on sports in general, you have that. I listen to you talk about the wind conditions at BG and the tunnel there. It's like there's knowledge, the conditional knowledge. There's something
right.
you gain from having tangibly set foot on the field
right.
that some of these people feel so detached. I think it's like along lines of like the gamification and
yes.
video. People are more worried about their Madden score than they actually playing the game and where they'll rank and on the next video game comes out.
Well, Ben, that's a great point. TV spoils us. If you ever get an opportunity to be on the sideline of a big-time college football game, I just worked for Michigan at one time, helping them with their quarterbacks. And so I was on the sideline. I'll tell you, you won't believe it. You will not believe how fast these people are. They're so fast that it almost appears to you to be slow motion. They're moving so quickly. You can't imagine the speed that they have, how quickly it happens. It's you can almost physically feel the speed as they're running by you, and you definitely can feel the collisions. I mean, if you can't, TV doesn't bring that to you. You get down to the sideline and you hear and see these collisions, you can't believe that these people can do this. I mean, I don't know. Have you ever been to a pro football? I did a couple shows in Canton for Pro Football Hall of Fame. In a way, it's kind of sad. I'm telling you, these men in their late 50s, early 60s, a lot of them can hardly walk. A lot of them are in really bad shape. And it's because they've been in all these collisions all their lives. And they're collisions. They really are.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's luckily at least the NFL and the Players Union and the Players Association are coming together to support some of them financially so that
And they fought it for a while. They didn't want to pay.
Yeah.
They're making all this money and they didn't want to pay, you know, and that's, you take care of your folks that made the league, and you just do, and they fought it for a long time. Credit Ohio State. I guess I'm a Michigan guy because I did a little work there, but you got to credit Ohio State. They came up with, Ben, they brought in rugby players. You ever notice how they tackle in rugby? You don't have a helmet in rugby, right? So if you're tackling in rugby, leading with your head, bad things are going to happen to you, right? So rugby people tackle from the side. So they're not doing these head-on collisions. So the Ohio State people had the rugby people teach their kids to tackle from the side. They caught on at Ohio State, the concussions went down, and then they started doing it across the country. So if you see college kids today, a lot of them will tackle, taking them, kind of rodeo them down, take them from the side so they don't get that head-on-head collision. Every time you hit somebody head-on-head, you don't have to get knocked out to have a concussion. That's a misnomer about it's a bruising of the brain. The brain floats in a liquid. It's a bruising of the brain. You get hit and you see those little stars, those little white lights, which happens to football players constantly, that's a concussion. And some of these guys have, you know, I interviewed Jim McMahon. Anybody remember Jim McMahon? He asked me if he could take the interview. I said, sure, great, you know. He said, because I won't remember anything I said, I like to go home and listen to it then. At that time, his wife had to, he's only in his late 50s, I think. His wife had to program his GPS so that he could get home. He couldn't get home. I mean, you know, your brain can only take so many, you know, to Ben's point, they're trying to make it safer, but when you get hit, you know, I mean, it's tough. I mean, it really is. It's difficult, so.
Well, I want to open it up to the floor for questions too. If anybody has any, if you put your hand up, I'll come over to you with the mic and leave it open to you guys. Anybody have any questions?
I've been talking a long, long time, Ben. I think
You did work the room earlier too, so you probably answered a lot of them. So here, hold on.
Who's the famous, your favorite of the non-famous people you talked about? Because we've talked about a lot of big ones. Is there one that stands out as being just kind of a smaller name even on these?
Of the people that nobody would know?
Yes.
That's a great question. Thank you so much. Duke Slater, African-American gentleman, he ended up being the second black judge in the history of Chicago. And when Duke played football, he came from a big family. You had to buy your own equipment back in those days in the 40s. You bought your own equipment. And the school didn't give you any equipment. And Duke didn't have the money to buy the equipment, so he had to make a choice. He either got shoes, he wore size 14s, which were probably hard to find, or wear a helmet. Duke took the shoes. So he played his high school and college career with no helmet, just shoes. He became the second African American to be a judge in the Chicago court system. So yeah, interesting, you know. And they went through a lot. They were very, very difficult on them. Yeah.
Tell you too, it will blow your mind, some of the stories in there that you think, I mean, they're all kind of cinematic in scale and scope. You think like, wow, it feels so detached, and you would think, again, some of them you would think happened way longer ago than when
no question.
Well, Tom will be signing books afterwards too, so feel free to pick up a copy, and I'm sure he'd be happy to answer questions.
Sure.
And thank you so much.
Sorry we talked so long. I know people have things to do, and
we can keep going.
You were great. It's an honor to have you here, Ben. You were wonderful. Thank you so much, and again, thank you so very much for being here. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. Oh, of course, that was great.